3 months ago, I entered into a marriage agreement with my arch-nemesis Samuel. During the divorce process, we were caught in the act by our parents on both sides. The fake marriage plan backfired. In this situation, Samuel is entirely to blame. He chose the wrong team, and even dragged me along, saying, "The atmosphere in this team is harmonious, no quarrels. We cooperate happily, no need for deep grievances." I actually believed his nonsense. After waiting in line for half a day, I found out that they only issue divorce certificates on this side, and the registration for the cooling-off period is on the deep grievances side. After switching teams and queuing up again, I turned around only to run into the shocked parents on both sides, caught red-handed, and promptly escorted out. 2 teams, 2 people, isn't it common sense to line up separately? I glanced at Samuel sideways, quickly shifting my gaze. This peacock, even approaching divorce, couldn't stop showing off, dressed up as if attending a wedding. He doesn't look like a divorced man at all, he could easily be the groom at a wedding. Samuel, unwilling to be outdone, glanced at me and coldly snorted, "Who took their time and came out 2 hours late? Gianna, could it be, you don't want a divorce and plan to stick with me? Needlepoint against a weed on." When our eyes met, it was a crackling exchange. "Enough. Who's at fault here? Who initiated the divorce?" Both moms said in unison. My mom squinted at me, "It must be your bad idea." While his mom stared at him fiercely, "Wait until we get home, and I'll deal with you." I dared not look at my mom. But seeing him not daring to look at his mom, I felt an inexplicable satisfaction. The esteemed Professor Samuel still has to bow down? A perfect display of family pressure. However, in less than 3 seconds, Samuel started to yield. He sighed lightly, "Let it be my fault, don't ask Gianna, she also has difficulties." After speaking, he bowed in apology. Let it be his fault? Just let it be? The elders all looked at me in unison. I could only give a bitter, shy smile. A ruthless person is waiting for this. Before we got married, we made an agreement to deal with both families, limit it to 3 months, and terminate the contract at the end. When divorcing, shift the blame onto me. There's no need for both of us to get scolded. The Samuel of that time understood the situation so well. Now, the tea-sipping him is just asking for trouble. What can I do? I can't bite back without substantial evidence of his wrongdoing. So, Samuel can only be my arch-nemesis, unable to even handle the role of an ex-husband properly. Our entanglement has a long history. Our moms were childhood best friends, and our dads were young fishing buddies. They got married in the same year, had children in the same year, and entered the same delivery room one after another. If it weren't for Samuel being born 3 days earlier, I might even doubt if the hospital had made a mistake. My parents are both archaeology professors, and his parents run a logistics company. He looked more like my parents' child from a young age, holding a brush at the age of 3, digging holes at 6, and carrying a little school bag, wanting to go to the fields with them to explore by the age of 8. As for me, I get a headache just looking at ancient texts and sprain my ankle as soon as I step into the wilderness. From childhood to adulthood, he has genuinely snatched away so much of my parent-child time. Hee. In retaliation, when he accompanied my parents in scholarly discussions, I joined his parents in practicing abacus, learning sand table techniques, and cultivating a business mindset. The main goal was to regain the right to family affection. During our student days, we were divided between arts and sciences. We were in office buildings at both ends. During major exams, my parents tutored him in humanities, outlining key points, while his parents helped me review physical and chemical experiments, summarizing and generalizing. When Samuel applied for graduate school, my respectful parents almost came to blows, just to snatch up this promising young talent. But there's nothing to be proud of. During my graduation internship, I intended to keep a low profile, go incognito. However, on the first day, Samuel's dad paraded me around, and I became a VIP intern, successfully infiltrating Samuel's family business. His buddies joked that Samuel's family had found a daughter-in-law in advance to inherit the family business. My best friend, not one to be outdone, spoke up for me, saying Samuel was only worthy of being a son-in-law by marriage. Years of mutual teasing, and we were like water and fire. Finally, at their wedding, Samuel and I suddenly realized that the clowns were us. So, a new round of competition began, snatching friends. His buddy also studied archaeology, went digging in the southwest after graduation, obsessed with it, wishing their honeymoon could be at the Sangsingdui site. This couldn't work. My best friend is a photographer, all about romance. The kind of romance that involves stars and the vast sea. It's not that Sang Singdui isn't romantic, but I was afraid his buddy could explain from the golden mask to the bronze sacred tree for 3 days and nights non-stop. Don't ask, asking is just dividing into groups. Samuel did something like that. I was forced to listen to it, and I had to praise him for his profound knowledge. I planned a complete honeymoon package, booked a luxury seaview room with a terrace, and even personally sent the two of them on a cruise. Half a month later, they came back happily, declaring that I would be the godmother of their child in the future. Haha, one around. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last. Their relationship was too good, and the next year, little Bun was born. Just as he started teething, they started considering early education and childcare. I was useless, only knew how to spend money. Samuel planned everything for them from nursery to high school, even left a hook, saying that if fate allowed, he could personally take her to college. Heh, he became little Bun's godfather. You tell me, isn't this a mess? I'm 3 days older than him. According to logic, Samuel should call me sister. Family and friendship, neither could determine a clear winner. Seeing that only love remained, I stayed on the sidelines. This time, I didn't think about taking the initiative. To compete with Samuel, marrying a stranger just to get a marriage certificate and entangling myself for a lifetime seemed absurd. Besides, work is quite busy, who has time for love? How extravagant. My best friend didn't think so. She sent little Bun to daycare, hung a SLR camera on her neck, sat in the office, and took work photos for me, saying she would use them for my blind dates. Do you want to develop with Samuel, but you're too familiar, and it's hard to make a move? How come she didn't go to the police academy back then? She's so good at interrogating. I was almost fooled, and even spilled coffee on the contract, adding 2 extra hours of work. Familiar? Am I familiar with Samuel? Do we see each other once a month? If I'm not on a business trip out of town, he's leading students on field internships. I get updates about him thanks to my parents nagging. They, with their discerning eyes, turned Samuel from a student into a colleague and are quite proud of it. But I think Samuel doesn't have it easy either. He has to endure hearing my name constantly at family banquets. Especially as I took on multiple projects, got promoted to vice president, and my share in the company kept increasing. I implemented many reforms. Except for Samuel's parents, others probably have quite a few opinions about me. Deciding to get married by agreement was quite sudden. At little Bun's birthday party, Samuel suddenly waved my photo and asked, "Are you in such a hurry to get married? Do you have to send pictures out? Are there no men around?" Funny. In our own company, Professor Samuel has been there. Can't he see there are men? If I could casually date while working, would I still be single now? Sister, in terms of position, salary, looks, and figure, which aspect am I lacking in? It's just a lack of opportunity. I directly retorted, does Professor Samuel not have any women around? Deliberately keeping my photos, looking for an excuse to strike up a conversation? Don't bother, my recent romantic encounters have been quite prosperous. Samuel lowered his eyes and chuckled lightly, the curve of his lips resembling a refined scoundrel. His gaze landed on something real, my best friend's little cousin. She seems to have just become a lecturer in the history department after graduating, quiet and scholarly, quite bookish. History matches archaeology, a natural pair, right? I couldn't help but roll my eyes and caught a glimpse of Samuel's buddy's younger cousin. Hey, forgot about him. This guy joined the sales department a few days ago as an intern in the company, so obedient, even calls me sister. The desire for victory or defeat, once it arises, is simply uncontrollable. I waved my hand and called out, "Alex, come over here to your sister." Alex responded from afar, smiling as he walked over with big strides. Feeling triumphant, I took the photo from Samuel's hand and boasted, "Professor Samuel, the company has a lot of fresh faces, and they're quite obedient. Workplace hidden rules?" Samuel lost, almost choked on his words. I won't indulge him. I can't leave Samuel's family? If worst comes to worst, I'll start my own business, rise again in the East. Samuel had no manners at all. I hadn't finished speaking, and he interrupted, exclaiming, "You're leaving the company for him?" Alex was also shocked, calling me sister and even calling him brother-in-law. You tell me, is it irritating? The first birthday banquet wasn't over, and I received consecutive phone calls from my 2 professor parents, bombarding me with questions about when I would bring my boyfriend home. Before I could explain, I heard my grandfather's voice on the phone, asking if I was going to discuss marriage and when we would register for it. I turned my head, and Samuel provocatively looked at me, pointing his finger in the direction of Alex. Fine, he started it. I quickly sent a message, telling his parents that Samuel was preparing to propose to his girlfriend. Then, I watched with satisfaction as he picked up the phone, and the smile on his face instantly collapsed. Fight fire with fire when dealing with me. As a result, we forgot that fishing enthusiasts can also chat. In a few days, the Hongmen banquet arrived. Both sets of parents insisted that we bring someone along for dinner. They said the two families were old friends, no need to be formal, and we should meet together. How could I bring Alex? I could only wait outside the hotel and chill. Samuel, rare for him to be late, arrived looking disheveled, as if he had rushed back from an archaeological site. He was covered in dust, his face lacking vitality and full of loneliness. Was he dissatisfied with the excavation results? Or just exhausted? Samuel looked up at me, without the usual sarcasm. Which fresh face did you bring? Didn't bring anyone, I retorted unkindly. Where's your company? He suddenly forced a smile, strangely good-looking, like he had let out a sigh of relief. I didn't bring anyone either. That day, the weather was fine. It unexpectedly stirred a touch of sympathy in me towards Samuel's desolate appearance. Then, let's get married. Just pretend for now and fool them, I suggested. He was shocked, his haggard face even more unsightly. To marry or not? If not, I'll find someone else. I checked the time, I should still be able to make it if I called for assistance. Just pretend? Samuel finally reacted, pondering over my words. Impatiently, I nodded, not wanting to look into his eyes. I hadn't noticed before, but how are his eyes so innocent, like a pair of innocent deer eyes? 3 months limit, divorce when it's over, I added. After some contemplation, he agreed. When divorcing, blame the fault on me. No need for both of us to endure scolding. Quite tactful. At that moment, he cooperated excessively, and I, out of mischief, tried a request. Can you call me sister? Then, he revealed his true colors, lunging at me to pinch my dimples. Unfortunately, my parents opened the door to the private room just then, unable to dodge in time and colliding with each other. I lost my first kiss. Meeting the parents and getting the marriage certificate went too smoothly. In the 3 months, we met both sets of relatives and friends. Samuel attended my grandfather's birthday banquet, and I attended his uncle's housewarming celebration. So smoothly that when our divorce was exposed, our parents couldn't accept it and had to find the reason. To be fair, my parents took him away, and his parents took me away. Indeed, both families had their traditional skills. Samuel's mom felt that her son was not treating me well and might have developed feelings for someone else. She dragged us together to inspect Samuel's friend circle. 3 phones were placed together, checking each post meticulously, not missing any liked posts. As they looked, they became a bit uncomfortable. Because Samuel almost liked every post of mine, including industry news and advertising promotions. They had some too, but not as much. Gradually, a forgetting one's mother when getting a wife expression appeared on Samuel's mom's face. I awkwardly smiled to defuse the situation. It's just mutual courtesy. I also liked his posts. That was only natural. Otherwise, my parents would criticize me for not caring about the cultural heritage of the country, not respecting the glorious 5,000 years of cultural inheritance. Samuel's dad accepted my explanation and then said, "Is it friends and colleagues from the company gossiping?" I shook my head repeatedly. Those tricks were too naive, just a matter of tit for tat. They fell silent briefly and then exclaimed, "Ding!" The doorbell rang. My parents stormed in like a whirlwind. The 4 of us simultaneously shouted, "Private time." Samuel and I looked at each other. My dad reflected on himself first. Last month's field internship shouldn't have assigned Samuel to take my place. It's all because of my recurring back pain that delayed things. Samuel's dad quickly followed. The month before last, when the branch company went on a business trip, there was no need for Gianna to make the trip, giving them unnecessary trouble. Me? What exactly do you want to do? While the 2 dads were self-reflecting, the moms had already kicked us out of the house. Go back to your own place, discuss things properly, find a place for a vacation. We'll cover the expenses. Report every day. You're not allowed to come back for at least 10 days or half a month. Back when we staged the entire act and got the marriage certificate, we moved in together. The house was a wedding gift from my grandfather, a 3-bedroom apartment. Samuel and I had a tacit understanding. We left the master bedroom empty, each taking a guest room and minding our own business. My parents, who abandoned business for literature, and I, studying automation design, joined a logistics company after graduation. My grandfather was so mad he almost kicked us out of the will. Fortunately, our marriage pleased him, and he changed his tune, saying that our family would also be an intellectual one. Listen, isn't this absurd? Even my grandfather thinks Samuel is a good catch. The house is in the university city. Oh well, I don't even know who to ask. Did I pick up the wrong child? It just feels off to go home together again without getting married. Wanna have a drink? Samuel suggested, as he usually liked to collect local homemade wine during field internships. Occasionally, we would have a drink, a rare moment of peaceful coexistence. But today, I'm just not interested. No. Rest early, recharge. Tomorrow, we'll stand in line and open our eyes. I gave him a stern look. If he hadn't stood in the wrong line, we would have already gotten the certificate and gone our separate ways. Samuel had the audacity to retort, then tomorrow, don't empty the wardrobe looking for clothes. Divorce, wear whatever you want. Why not? You have 3-piece suits welded to your body, your small head slicked with a pound of oil, dressed up like a peacock. And I have to watch you attract bees and butterflies? Unreasonable. Gianna, are you jealous? Why so worked up? Suddenly, he moved closer, not maintaining the 75-centimeter safe social distance. I stepped back, mocking his immaturity. Samuel, if you're brave enough, let's compare and see if you attract more bees or I attract more butterflies. The loser has to insist on divorcing in front of our parents. Jealousy? That's a child's game. Adults have to fight to the death. A cold glare appeared in Samuel's eyes, but he maintained his tough stance. How do we compare? That's too simple. Right turn out of the neighborhood, past 2 street corners, the 3rd storefront, the Chingba restaurant where we've been gathering since college. We have 1 hour. Whoever gets more contact information wins. We made a bet. His buddies and my bestie, hearing the news, each with a glass of juice, nibbling on melon seeds, volunteered to be referees. These two loved to watch the excitement, and even suggested, why not just exchange WeChat directly? Samuel snorted, Gianna's WeChat is valuable, worth hundreds of thousands, can she be interested? I could counter, Professor Samuel's WeChat is too high and mighty, not everyone can aspire to it. Turning clockwise, leaning on a cup of Icelandic red tea to look young, the crowded tables of young fresh meat all came over to call me sister. Watching the innocent puppy eyes of these inexperienced little ones is much more interesting than Samuel, the professor. 1 hour later, my hands were filled with slips of paper with phone numbers. Watching Samuel chatting with the girl at the bar for a long time. I threw the slips of paper in front of the referee, then stepped forward to grab him. It's almost time. Are you going to continue chatting or admit defeat? Samuel also threw a bunch of slips of paper, and there were quite a few. My bestie handed me an expression that said, so he's the Sea King. I tilted my head, pretending not to see. Anyway, I would definitely win. No university student can resist the temptation of an internship certificate. I'll just consider it as requesting resumes in advance for the HR department. Not a single number will go to waste. As the Icelandic red tea revealed its bottom, I looked at the voting results and was dumbfounded. A tie. How is that possible? His buddy squinted at Samuel, looking down on him, starting to recruit students based on looks again? Take more elective courses to broaden your horizons, Samuel confidently said. Miscalculation. It's hard to end without distinguishing the winner or loser. We returned to the most primitive contest: rock, paper, scissors. There was no suspense. Because he only throws rocks, and I'm used to throwing paper. I won. He carried me back home. The aftertaste of Icelandic red tea was unexpectedly strong. Should have known, should have drunk homemade wine at home. Samuel, in a critical moment, still acted like a man, didn't take advantage of the opportunity, and sent me back to the guest room. However, early the next morning, I was infuriated by the barrage of text messages. Professor Samuel, can I add you on WeChat? Professor Samuel, can I apply to switch to your fieldwork internship next month? Professor Samuel, I have a friend who wants to ask. Gianna, how come the phone numbers you gave out last night are mine? A low roar from outside, and Samuel rushed in with a face full of black lines. Miss, if I go, are you interviewing me? Miss, I part-time as a fitness coach. Does that add points to my resume? Miss, can I? He could even expressively read them out loud, with a throaty voice. Hee hee, tit for tat. My morning grumpiness finally dissipated. I lifted the covers, got out of bed, and headed for a shower. As I washed, I thought about Samuel's unkempt appearance earlier. Messy hair, stubble, slightly reddened eyes, a cute damaged look in a way. Well, maybe my aesthetic sense is a bit different from others. Samuel's usual calm and gentlemanly demeanor, I just can't stand. Clearly, he's a smooth talker, full of nonsense, and can be deadly when he's crazy, but he insists on portraying himself as deep and mysterious. Speaking of which, the 3-star pile explanation incident also had its reasons. At that time, I admired Samuel greatly and was on the verge of falling for him. In my 3rd year, faced with the choice between taking the postgraduate exam or interning, I hesitated. I wanted to seek advice from the 2 professors in my family, but they were busy trying to win Samuel as their prized student, leaving no time for me. I got annoyed and ran off to the southwest for a break, inexplicably deciding to visit the 3-star pile site. It's just archaeology, what's so great about it? I even had the idea to secretly enroll in the archaeology department, make a stunning debut, and blind everyone's eyes. But against all expectations, just as I got off the plane and hadn't even reached the museum, I twisted my foot. How unlucky. When I was a child, whenever my parents took me to the field to dig, I would twist my foot. I never thought that even visiting an archaeological site would bring disaster. Lying in the hotel, looking at my ankle swollen like a steamed bun, I could only shift my target and complain about Samuel. Who asked him to be so outstanding and even come to my house? Perhaps, without him, my dad could have turned me into a rising star in the field of archaeology. In the midst of my whimsy, the hotel door was smashed loudly. Samuel barged in while yelling, "Gianna, open the door. You're so capable, you dare to run away from home." I was scared, stood on one leg, and opened the door hopping. There appeared Samuel in a damaged state, disheveled hair, stubble, and bloodshot eyes. As soon as he saw me, he sighed as if deflated. "Do you know how many hotels I've searched? You just ran away without a word. If I hadn't gone to the dormitory to find you, everyone would have been kept in the dark." It was true. When I'm not at home, my parents think I'm in the dormitory. If I'm not in the dormitory, my bestie thinks I'm at home. Only Samuel, who frequently goes to my house to consult my parents about academics and runs errands for his parents at the dormitory, would realize I'm not around. He finally asked me, "You can run so fast, why don't you find a ladder to run up to the sky?" I was speechless for a while, and in a daze, I said, "I didn't plan to run, I just wanted to see the 3-star pile." I twisted my foot and couldn't even leave the door. "The hotel food is so expensive. I don't have enough money." Samuel lowered his head, looked for 2 seconds, then scolded, muttering, "Twisted your foot, and you're here opening doors. You could say he has a nerve." It was he who smashed the door and made me open it. Perhaps out of pity for me, Samuel stayed and explained the information about the 3-star pile in the hotel room for 3 full days and nights. He wasn't tired at all, and the more he talked, the more his eyes gleamed. When he heard that I was stubbornly going to switch to archaeology, he became even more enthusiastic, thoroughly analyzing the future prospects of applying automation information technology in archaeology. Thanks to his efforts, I successfully gave up archaeology. After my foot healed, I returned home and submitted internship resumes. Automation information technology is widely used in the logistics industry, and I'm competent for the job. In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. He became a well-deserved professor, and I became the vice president of a logistics company, crossing to fulfill the expectations of both families for the next generation. No wonder our parents wanted to match us up. I picked a white chiffon dress, styled my hair in waves, dabbed on some perfume, and walked out of the guest room with the marriage certificate in hand. The house was unusually quiet. "Samuel?" I felt a bit anxious, wondering if he was thinking of standing me up. At that moment, a familiar yet nervous greeting came from the living room. "Sister Gianna, are you ready?" I was stunned, thinking, why is Alex here? "Why did you come?" I sent a message. "There's a situation at the company, and I was a bit anxious. I thought I'd come and ask you." Alex had been in the sales department, and out of trust in his brother Samuel, I had asked him to pay attention to some things. Since he came to my house, it must be a big deal. And, it shouldn't be easily revealed to Samuel's family. After all, no boss wants to see internal conflicts. I immediately took out my phone, swiped up and down, and noticed a particularly conspicuous message among a pile of messages from Professor Samuel. Sis, the official seal has been changed. Director Wyatt replaced all the official seals. The project department and the finance department are about to clash. My blood pressure instantly rose. The marriage certificate was tucked on the dresser. I grabbed my bag and was about to rush out, saying, Alex, did you drive? I'll take your car. I was too nervous, sweating in my palms, and couldn't drive. Gianna, you had plans with me today. You're not allowed to leave with him. Samuel spoke up, trying to stop me, catching up to block my way. I was really anxious. This Director Wyatt is Samuel's uncle. I even gave him a housewarming gift. He talked behind my back, saying I had a narrow-minded view just because I'm a woman. Fine, let it be. Small-minded tricks. I didn't expect him to dare to replace the official seal. Just because he conspired privately with another bidding company, maliciously sabotaging the bid, and seeking personal gain. Last week, when I caught him once, he made a mistake in the bid proposal, thinking I had already reminded him thoroughly. But now, he went even further. If it weren't for the fact that he's Samuel's family, and I couldn't let Samuel's parents lose face, I wouldn't be in such a hurry. Alex didn't dare to rush me, just stood there anxiously watching the time. Samuel, persistent as ever, looked at me with those innocent dear eyes, insisting that I stay. I was furious. Samuel, are you in such a hurry to get a divorce? Fine. You take the marriage certificate and go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to queue up. Just don't mistake the line this time. Samuel, yelled at by me, took a half step back. I pushed him away and walked back to the dresser, taking the marriage certificate with me. All the way to the company. Alex was scared and didn't dare to speak. This little brat was probably scared out of his wits. Wyatt wasn't in a hurry at all. He was still in the office making tea. When he saw me come in, he greeted me with a smile. Gianna, big brother and sister-in-law said you were going on a trip these days. How come you still have time to come to the company? Director Wyatt, isn't it because of your grandeur that I have to come in person? I sat down and poured myself a cup of tea, suppressing the anger in my heart. Don't be so formal, now that we're family. Call me Uncle Wyatt, no outsiders here. Wyatt had become quite adept at talking nonsense with a straight face. Unfortunately, I wasn't falling for it. If you wanted to send me to the branch and ask the boss to arrange for me to go on a business trip for restructuring, wouldn't I be considered an outsider? How come, just because the official seal is changed, I'm no longer an outsider? Am I considered a member of the boss's family or your Wyatt's family? Wyatt's face stiffened, and he threw the teacup. What's so great about it? You dare to climb up to my head. When I was working with Samuel's father to build the company, you didn't even know where you were running. Now that we're implementing an automated system, you want to walk around the company with your head held high, trying to meddle inside and out. How can things be so good? Don't flaunt your marriage to Samuel. Everyone knows Samuel's father couldn't educate his son, so he brought you in to work for him. You're just a foolish. Whether I'm foolish or not, Director Wyatt doesn't need to worry. At least, the shares and position I hold are well-deserved. Even if I leave the company, I have a promising future anywhere else. Unlike some people, who think changing a company seal means they have boundless prospects. Bang. This time, the teapot was smashed directly. A top-quality purple clay teapot. Samuel's father brought it from Jiangnan. No appreciation whatsoever. Shares? Huh. If Samuel's family really valued you, would you only have that little share? The shares of the couple are still left for their son. I think you should go back and focus on having children. TSK. Arguing with an old man is really boring. A few words can't refute him, and he starts talking about women having children again. If it weren't for the surveillance footage, I wouldn't bother with him. Clang. The office door opened. Alex, did you get it? I asked, confident. Wyatt in front of me instantly turned dark, his mouth trembling, and he awkwardly said, Samuel, why are you here? Samuel? Samuel? I turned my head to look. I saw Samuel holding a USB drive, followed by Alex and several leaders from the project department and finance department. Frowning, I first glanced at Alex, who avoided eye contact and stepped aside. This little brat learned how to leak information? Uncle, you voluntarily surrender, or should I report it to everyone in the group first? I had said before, Samuel doesn't have a proper form, he speaks with a refined face. Wyatt's face changed several times, muttering to himself, you have no evidence, and the surveillance. The surveillance has been broken for a long time, and no one has fixed it? Samuel laughed and walked forward, pressing his hand on my shoulder. You might have a misunderstanding about Gianna. She, with a scientific mind, is too serious and never avoids trouble. I rolled my eyes in my heart, feeling that it wasn't a compliment. If you want her to write some outstanding employee speeches, promotion reflections, and full people, it might not work. But if you want her to remain silent and update all the company's equipment information, she is more proactive than anyone else. Do you know where these new cameras are? Wyatt swallowed his saliva, admitting defeat. I couldn't bear it anymore, snatched the USB drive from Samuel's hand, asked Alex to inform security and legal to handle it, and dragged Samuel away. Samuel obediently followed. What nonsense are you talking about? What new cameras? How many cameras are there? I was truly speechless. Shouldn't a professor be more rigorous in his conduct? Always running his mouth. He doesn't understand. I bluffed to let legal handle it and avoid bothering you again. Samuel shrugged, looking indifferent. Why did you come? I really didn't expect him to follow. Shouldn't he be queuing at the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the marriage certificate? I lost my temper just now. When you and Alex left, I realized it might be something in the company. And, since you didn't want to say, maybe it was the family causing trouble. So, I followed to take a look. When I heard you went into Uncle's office, I knew it was that old-fashioned guy causing trouble. He followed behind me, explaining, when he came to the company with my dad, he couldn't even figure out the ledger. It took these years to finally sort things out. You come to reform with automated information management, and he probably can't adapt. Samuel was quite frank, and there wasn't much wrong with what he said. I reluctantly forgave his attitude at home. Moreover, it's the family's company. I can't just watch you suffer. We haven't divorced yet, have we? If my parents find out, I'll be drowned in their spit. Great. Just now, I thought his attitude was sincere. Don't worry, I won't complain about these things. It's not purely for the family to prosper. Instead, it's to handle these situations in any company. I'm going to register in line. I glanced at the time, there was still time. Let's go, let's register in line. I waved to him, ready to rush to the Civil Affairs Bureau, not delaying a minute. Oh, by the way, when I came just now, I received a call and discovered a set of genetic data samples from ancient humans 6,000 years ago. He said a couple of sentences and took his leave. I peeked out of the window and saw my best friend's little cousin waving to him from the car. TSK. 6,000 years ago, let the history department go together. After Wyatt's incident, the employees vividly described the scene to Samuel's parents. They felt extremely guilty and immediately contacted a lawyer to transfer my shares. They also took the responsibility upon themselves, stating that there was absolutely no intention to make me sacrifice. Especially if things didn't work out between Samuel and me, they wouldn't force me. I knew they had been to our house, intending to surprise us by hiring a decoration company to fill the place with roses and balloons, creating a wedding atmosphere. However, the decoration company couldn't confirm which room was the master bedroom. The one that looked most like the master bedroom showed no signs of life, while the other two seemed more like guest rooms used for living separately. I didn't blame them, after all, I had given them the password to my house. They only mentioned bringing soup, so I didn't have my guard up. The news reached my parents, who, being scholars familiar with historical literature and bizarre stories, speculated whether our marriage was a sham to deceive them. My mom, in her usual direct manner, asked if I had been dishonest with them. I assured her that I wouldn't disclose anything. Despite their close friendship, I couldn't trust my mom with this secret. Their friendship group was tight-knit, and if one knew, all would know. Samuel had been away for half a month, and all I knew was that he went to the Southwest Mountains. Through a phone call, he complained about heavy rain. I asked, "How much longer until you come back? I'm being interrogated every day, and I can barely endure it. It's too tough." His voice, cutting through the rain, replied, "Trying to pass the difficult stuff onto me again? You didn't want to practice calligraphy, lied about it being fun, took away my abacus. Ancient books are too tough to crack, lied about my handwriting being good, and asked me to take notes for you. And, you swore to study archaeology, but turned around and went to work at the company?" I retorted, well, men who are so petty are easy to turn ugly. Do you still want to be a peacock? Samuel sighed, "Now I can only be called a soaked chicken, where's the peacock?" I felt a strange chill in my heart, as if something was amiss. Wanting to know more, I asked, "Samuel, is your work still going smoothly? Have you found any treasures?" Samuel mumbled something indistinct in the loud rain. What did you say? I asked again, when are you coming back? Samuel, acting like a mischievous child, said, so eager for a divorce? Found a second spring? I won't come back, just to make you anxious. Crack! A thunderous clap interrupted our conversation. The signal was bad, and the call was abruptly cut off. This call, instead of bringing comfort, left me restless. The next day, with clear autumn weather perfect for photography, my friend brought her little one to my house, suggesting a countryside outing. Sitting on the grass, gazing at the cloudless sky, we marveled at the tranquility of the passing time. When Samuel's mention of a second spring came up, his buddy hurriedly came over, urging us to leave. Annoyed that our conversation had been disrupted, I quipped, you show up every time someone speaks ill of Samuel, it's like you have a telepathic connection. His friend, glancing at his wife and then at me, was momentarily tongue-tied, mouth opening and closing. What's the rush? Why so flustered? My friend, holding the little one, worried that he might startle the child. Feeling a bit uneasy, I asked involuntarily, something happened to Samuel? His friend's eyes teared up, and he began, continuous heavy rain in the southwest, and they've encountered a disaster. This time, they were excavating ancient human remains. The conditions on site were challenging, and the operation was difficult. Yesterday afternoon, little sis and a few colleagues slipped down the mountain. Samuel's team went down to find. As he spoke, he wiped away tears. We quickly packed up the picnic, tossed everything into the car, and rushed to the airport. Samuel called me last night. It can't be true. In the evening, he brought everyone back, but found a missing labeled bag and went back again. Still hasn't been found. I'm his wife, if something happened, I would have received a message. It hasn't been 24 hours yet, the team will conduct a search and rescue first. If they don't find him by the deadline, they'll notify us. Wiping away a tear, his friend said, I'm familiar with that mountainous area, so I'm going to help. I'm going with you. Almost without consideration, I insisted on personally bringing back this silently foolish person. If it's true, then he was already in trouble when he called me last night, yet he remained silent. Stubborn as hell. I won't come back, it'll make you anxious. Listen to this nonsense. Is this how people talk? Together, we took a flight. The little one behaved exceptionally well, sleeping throughout the journey. I might be saying something inappropriate, his buddy suddenly spoke up. Before you two decided to meet the parents, Samuel invited me for drinks. He got quite drunk and started rambling about you wanting to bring my cousin home. I teased him, saying he must be out of his mind, but he insisted I go back to lock the door, not letting Alex out. I remained silent. Later, I told him it was impossible, that you were probably just talking big. I had to forcefully take him to the hotel entrance before he gave up. When you two got married, we felt like we had finally weathered the storm. Childhood sweethearts, childhood pledges transitioned into reality. The couple, probably fearing I might not take it well, kept narrating these happy incidents. However, all I felt was the urge to cry. Samuel, you really are beyond foolish. As the torrential rain persisted, the plane circled for a long time before making an emergency landing in a neighboring city. It was yet another journey of boat and car rides. Considering the little one, my close friend opted not to join us at the camp. I assured her I would return safely. Upon seeing us, the little cousin burst into tears, apologizing, Gianna's sister, brother-in-law. Professor Samuel did it for us. We lost the bag. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The team members around us also began crying. Unable to hold back, I too was in tears. As the rain gradually subsided, they accompanied me in the nearby forest to search for him. The chances of finding him were slim. I knew they were trying to console me, fearing I might do nothing and let my mind run wild. The phone signal wasn't great, with intermittent blackouts. This way was better, I dared not tell my parents. Samuel was missing. Accompanying me were several advisors from the history department, regardless of gender, all calling me Gianna's sister and Samuel brother-in-law. I didn't quite understand. Do you all call Samuel that too? Isn't he upset? I asked. The little cousin replied, they all started calling him brother-in-law because I did. When I called you sister, Professor Samuel insisted I call him brother-in-law. Now the whole team addresses him as brother-in-law. What a fool. Everyone laughed through their tears. Recalling how Samuel had used the little cousin more than once to annoy me, I decided that when I found him, I would expose his true colors, even in front of the young girl. Oh well, let's find him first. Near midnight, the the rain finally ceased. The team leader had a conversation with me. Tomorrow, a new rescue team would ascend the mountain, and I needed to inform my parents at home. While others took a break, sleep eluded me. I walked around the mountain where he had gone missing over and over again, thinking about his last phone call, recalling him describing himself as a soaked chicken, and the final thunderous sound. A sudden idea struck me. The thunder was so loud, could lightning have struck a tree? If that were the case. I looked up, scanning the surroundings. There were no trees split in half, burned to charcoal. But wait, what was that? The beam of my flashlight bounced around the forest, and due to excitement, I struggled to steady my hand before finally seeing it. On a side branch hung something like a torn piece of cloth, long and vertical, resembling a sleeve. It was a sleeve, Samuel's peacock-patterned suit sleeve. Who wears such a flamboyant suit for field work? Wearing a suit while squatting in a pit, only he could manage that. Being some distance from the camp, I couldn't turn back to find someone in time. Assessing the mountain path, not excessively muddy, I grabbed vines and descended. My toes kept slipping on the mountain wall. Praying all the way, don't sprain, don't sprain. At this crucial moment, don't sprain. When I found Samuel, he was drenched, huddled in a tree hollow, covered with tree leaves he must have found somewhere, damp and far from warm. I wondered how much effort it took for him to throw the suit onto the tree branch. The forest was vast. During the day, we almost got lost in the woods, unable to discern if we hadn't been there or if, after several trips, we kept missing him. Samuel wasn't in great shape, running a slight fever, his face as red as a ripe apple. He couldn't articulate anything until I supported him while searching for a signal. It was then that I discovered both his feet were injured, making movement impossible. I had no choice but to leave him temporarily, searching for a location with a signal. After making a call to the camp, I returned to attend to him. Back at the camp, we rested for nearly a week before he finally regained his strength. I was a bit angry. Why didn't he seek help when he could clearly make a phone call? Samuel explained that after the fall, his legs were already immobile. He only realized the lack of signal when he took out his phone, as the satellite phone was left at the camp. Desperate to call for help, he continuously dialed my number but couldn't connect until he was almost delirious. He thought it was a hallucination when I answered. Well, even in such a situation, he managed to argue with me. That's Samuel, always sharp-minded. After transferring from the camp to the town, we reassured our families of our safety. They knew I had come to find Samuel but were unaware of what he had been through. Samuel, annoyed, grabbed the phone, exclaiming, "Stop bothering us, you're delaying me from chasing my wife." Quite the talker. Do you want to chase a wife? Which one? Should we hurry back, get a divorce certificate, and make it easier for you to find a second spring? I flipped through my flight information on the phone, looking for the nearest flight to book. Sister, don't you find this room familiar? Samuel was addicted to grabbing my phone, leaving me empty-handed. I blinked my eyes, his one sentence carried too much information. What did he call me? And what about this room? Are you out of your mind? I touched his forehead, feeling unsure. He took my hand, fingers interlocking, and surveyed the room. In our junior year, you ran away from home, and you hid in this room, right? At that time, I just found out you were missing, and I was nearly going crazy. I could only check flight information and search hotels one by one. You know, I wished I could just put you in my pocket and take you away. I blinked my eyes. Then you lied to me, saying you wanted to study archaeology. I thought we could be like Master and the others, working together. He was caught, feeling a bit uncomfortable. The atmosphere was actually quite good, but I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Haha. I was starting to have feelings for you when you came to find me. But then you lectured me on Sanxingui for 3 days, and I gave up without hesitation. I laughed too loudly. Samuel, wanting to save face, kissed me passionately, silencing me. Of course. After that, neither of us mentioned divorce again. Before going home, he accompanied me for another visit to Sanxingui. This time, no explanations were needed. Once we returned home, I subtly felt that some things were different. The flamboyant Samuel had surprisingly become more reserved. The guy who wanted to wear a full suit even at the excavation site and used to insist on going out to meet friends in a casual cotton t-shirt and jacket, now covertly watched me, feeling jealous and curious, saying, "Sister, you look so good. Whose number are you planning to get today?" Can you believe it? He called me sister. But it was only when he was being sarcastic that he said it, making it less meaningful. During gatherings, I secretly asked my best friend if men became like this when they were in love. She, being a romantic herself, thought for a moment and then enlightened me. He's showing signs of insecurity. Perhaps he feels that, without a clear confession of affection from you, it doesn't count? It's like he's afraid of losing what he has. Professor Samuel was indeed a sensitive person. After returning, he solemnly invited both sets of parents for dinner, reiterating that we would be together for a long time and would never bring up divorce again. With his eloquent speech, he moved both mothers to tears. Perhaps I needed to make a gesture too. I wasn't good at writing poetry or giving speeches, but as adults, who couldn't appreciate some directness? I asked him in advance, "Do you like cats or rabbits?" He chose cats but refused to have real animals at home, reasoning that we were both too busy to take care of them. See, that's why he's the younger one. Simple. After the full set of cat outfits arrived, I dressed up in full gear, wearing a bathrobe with a hood. Carefully holding the collar, preventing the bell from making any noise, I tiptoed into the study. I was quite pleased with the surprise I had prepared for my sister. Then, a low growl came from the study. "Gianna." I was almost scared enough to drop the collar. "What are you doing?" I hid the items behind me and walked into the study, but only stood at the door. He looked up, holding the documents in his hand with disbelief. "Did you seriously consider property division in case of divorce?" "Let me see. You're really generous." Oops. I completely forgot about these. I had kept them in the safe, intending to confirm them with him after registering the divorce coolly. However, one thing led to another, especially after coming back from the Southwest. We were immersed in the joy of surviving the ordeal, and I had completely forgotten about these papers. Now that he brought it up, I seemed a bit heartless. "If I hadn't had an accident, would you even consider being with me? Do you really like me?" Samuel seemed genuinely aggrieved, his arm resting wearily on the table, suspecting, "Is it just the bridge effect?" "The bridge effect? Do you think I would wear this and make you happy if I didn't like you? You're taking advantage of the situation. Isn't that called liking someone?" I pulled down the hood of the bathrobe, revealing 2 fluffy cat ears. His innocent deer-like eyes instantly changed, staring at me in amazement, blinking only after a while. Then, his Adam's apple moved, and Professor Samuel's face turned red. "Ahem. Let's start over." He threw the property division list into the trash can, and incidentally added something to the safe. Turning around, he couldn't wait to grin foolishly at me. "Sister. What did you just put in?" "Don't think my eyesight is bad," I noticed. "Nothing, really." He evaded my gaze and took the collar from my hand, asking, "Is this for me to wear?" I gave him a cold look, with my palm facing upward, waiting. After a brief standoff, he conceded and took out a document from the safe. It was a personal accident insurance policy, with me listed as the beneficiary, Gianna. My nose tingled, and tears quickly welled up. "Samuel, are you foolish? I can't let you have no protection." Knowing he was in the wrong, he gently kissed the corner of my eye. "It's just insurance, nothing else." "Well, that property division was just a formality, nothing else." I sobbed. He sighed helplessly. Finally, his forehead touched mine, warm and comforting. After a long while, we simultaneously said, "All squared." After hugging for a while, he gently approached my ear, tempting, "Sister, shall I put a bell on you?" "Sure, why not?"